In the face of tremendous technological development at unprecedented and exponentially increasing speeds, we stand at a pivotal moment to decide whether or not we actively accelerate humanity's natural evolution. And if we do, then how? Welcome to Superhuman.
Good evening, good evening. Wow, a room full of superhumans. Have you tapped into your superpowers today? Is there some energy here? Have you tapped into your... Good, I like this, superpower in the room. So my name is Sabine von Gafke. I'm here to have a wonderful, candid conversation around longevity. I'm also the Director of Partnerships and Programming at Superhuman and the co-founder of Brain Gym. Now, there is a saying that food is thy medicine, and it comes from what we call the father of medicine, Hippocrates. And this conversation is truly going to be about the deeper layers of regenerative health, system thinking, meaning, and also vitality. Because there are some people who can speak to the mind, and there are some who can speak to the body. And there are a few that actually can speak to both. And I have the pleasure to have one of them beside me, Dr. Mark Hyman, a physician, a pioneer, a system thinker, also really reshaping how we understand functional medicine, aging, and food. And for decades, I don't know if you know, he's really helped millions of people go from symptom management to deep cellular healing. And we're going to learn about how that can happen with functional medicine. So with that, I'm also going to say, Mark usually says, health is not the absence of dis-ease, but the presence of coherence, purpose, and radical aliveness. So with that, welcome, Mark Hyman.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
So, Mark...
You're all still here, that's good.
Yeah. How many of you know about functional medicine? Let's start there. Good. Mark, it's a room for you. But we're going to give you even more in-depth about it. And Mark, the interesting thing with you, you've really challenged conventional medicine for many, many years.
Yeah.
But if we sort of strip the layers and take everything back, we take away beyond science, beyond protocols, beyond metrics, what has sort of been your most personal and intimate lesson about health and vitality?
Well, you know, I came to this, early on by studying systems thinking. And, I went into medicine knowing that it was broken and flawed and didn't know what I was going to do, but thought I'd figure it out. And if I didn't like it, I would stop. And I ended up really kind of digesting the whole corpus of traditional medicine and becoming very good at it. And then I realized something was really wrong with it and didn't quite understand what the new model was. I had studied ancient healing systems and had understood the nature of the biology being more interconnected, but there wasn't a Western framework for it. And then when I was 36, I got very sick with mercury poisoning after living in China, and every one of my systems broke down. And I ended up having to find a way to get better, and then I discovered the work of Dr. Jeffrey Bland, and I heard him speak, and I thought either he's a genius or he's a quack, and if he's right, I better figure it out, because my life depends on it, and so does my patients. And then I went down this rabbit hole of really discovering that the body's a network, it's a system, and that our entire model of diseases is completely unrepresentative of the nature of biology. And it became very clear to me that we have laws of physics, and you could probably describe them, thermodynamics, gravity, whatever. If I said to you, what are the laws of biology, you would probably go, well, I don't know, evolution, but you might not have much more to say than that because they haven't really been described. If I said, what are the laws of medicine, you'd be even at a greater loss to figure out what was going on. And I think what I came to understand is that there are, even though we haven't described them in traditional Western medicine, there are fundamental laws of biology and human health that have not been described. And when I went down the rabbit hole of understanding the body as a network, as a system, I began to really sort of unpack that at a very practical level. And I had to reverse engineer my own health to understand each one of my biological systems and how those were out of balance and how to create balance in those systems. And that fundamentally is what functional medicine is. It's understanding the body as a dynamic network that has to be in balance. And when disease arises, it's because there's some disturbance in the system, either a lack of something that the body needs to thrive or too much of something the body doesn't agree with, like, for example, Mercury in my case. And often it's many things. And so, we can't get to the answer of how to create health, which is what functional medicine is about, without really understanding these fundamental systems. And what's really exciting to me about this field of longevity and the science of aging is that traditional academic scientists have come to the same exact conclusion that functional medicine has over 30 years ago. And when you look at what they talk about as the hallmarks of aging, which are these fundamental things that go awry as you get older that underlie all disease. For example, if you cured heart disease and cancer from the face of the planet, life expectancy would increase maybe by 5 to 7 years, which are the number 1 and 2 killers. However, if you understand what the hallmarks of aging are and you corrected the disturbances in those fundamental things that go wrong, you could extend life by 20 or 30 years. And when you look at those things that are described as the hallmarks of aging, they map almost perfectly on the map of functional medicine, what I would call the laws of biology. And, disturbances in our nutrient sensing systems and nutrition, mitochondrial dysfunction, microbiome changes, inflammation, and so forth. And we begin to look at all these things and you go, well, we actually know how to assess them, we know how to treat them, we know how to correct those things, and we know how to reverse the trajectory of biological aging by optimizing these systems. And it's not one thing. I mean, the whole framework of functional medicine is that it's really about understanding that disease has multiple causes and creates multiple diseases. And from these small number of general causes, and that there are also many diseases that can ensue from one cause. In fact, I was having an interview with this woman who was from the Financial Times equivalent in Sweden, and after the interview, she said, I just want to share with you that I was very sick. I was on a lot of medications. I had a whole number of different diseases, and I was treated with all these different medications for each of these different diseases, and I was, very, very ill, and doctors told me there was nothing else I could do except take these medications, which weren't really fixing the problem. And she said her sister told her to go to someplace in Norway, and they diagnosed her by looking at her genes, which she had a gene for celiac disease, and she ended up having celiac disease, and that is where gluten can create 100 different conditions, everything from schizophrenia to osteoporosis to iron deficiency to colitis to rheumatoid arthritis to many, many other conditions. And so functional medicine is, I would say, the new map for the landscape of disease, and it's really, I think, a very powerful clinical methodology for understanding all the various things that you hear about in the field of longevity, knowing where to place them, and then what to do about it. And then implementing those things in individuals can have profound effects. So I think we don't really know how to do those things in traditional medicine. If I said to most traditional doctors, how do you reverse heart failure and diabetes and hypertension and dementia, they wouldn't have an answer. They would have drugs to give you, but they wouldn't really have an answer. And functional medicine is really that answer.
And do you think that it's then a mindset? Because, like you say, functional medicine is really the fundament, the basics, or even the pinnacle. But yet, we have technology today that is really accelerating how we can access data, how we can optimize our health. But yet we have more chronic disease than ever. So it's not our genetics who have changed, but our environment.
Yeah.
So where would you sort of put or funnel functional medicine into that sort of equation, that we have all the technology, but yet we're also accelerating autoimmune disease, inflammation?
Yeah, it's a terrible paradox. As we've gotten smarter and smarter, learn more and more, we've gotten sicker and sicker, and we're in this sort of death spiral. As we're understanding the secrets of longevity, we're also seeing this catastrophic epidemic of chronic disease increasing globally, not just in America. Globally, lifestyle-related chronic diseases is killing twice as many people as infectious disease. And there's now the double burden of disease in places like Africa that are very poor. So I think the beauty of this model is that it's able to sort of use technology when it emerges and know where to put it. It's like if you have a framework or a set of laws, you know how to build a bridge or send a rocket to Mars based on a small number of general laws. And now Pierre Laplace, who's a physicist, said centuries ago that you can explain a large number of observed phenomena from a small number of general laws. And until we really understand that in medicine, we're going to be constantly chasing our tail and trying to find the cure for this or the cure for that. And Alzheimer's has been the epitome of this kind of catastrophic thinking, which led us down the amyloid path of the theory that amyloid was the cause of plaques in the brain causing Alzheimer's, and we spent billions of dollars and hundreds of studies around the world, and have had an abject failure in actually making a dent. But using the principles of functional medicine, I've had many patients that have reversed their Alzheimer's, and there's now scientists like Richard Isaacson, who was from Cornell and is now in Florida, is doing pioneering work using multimodal treatments for multifactorial causes and addressing everything that needs to be addressed in the human body by having that new set of principles.
And I think what sort of just to give it a bit of a practical perspective, also based on your research and your trials, and above all the patients that you've had, and that's to put it in perspective here. I know that you have a 5 to 10 day detox program that has had tremendous results. And once again, we talk about detox, but with you really have results. So sort of maybe to inspire the audience here, what is it that gives so much tremendous results and can actually really decrease the inflammation in something that we might see as simplistic as a detox?
Great question. I mean, that woman I was mentioning, I hope she's here, but she was very overweight. She said she had all these different diseases, and she went on not just gluten elimination, but she went on a full, what she called autoimmune paleo diet, which essentially eliminates grains, beans, nightshades, eggs, obviously processed food, sugar, alcohol, and ate protein, vegetables, fruit, good
Back
fats,
to the basics.
so forth, and also eliminates nuts and seeds, which not everybody has to do. But it was basically, it's called an elimination diet, but I think of it more as an addition diet. You're adding in all the healing foods and you're removing all the disease-causing foods, or potentially disease-causing foods. And in her case, she lost 100 pounds and her health completely transformed and she resolved everything. And so what I found is that using this as a first step for people, I call it the 10-day detox. If I call it the 10-month detox, no one would do it. But basically, you basically take away bad stuff for a week or 10 days and add in the good stuff. And I've done this with thousands of people. And the results are really remarkable, from everything something as severe as rheumatoid arthritis going away to just what I call FLC syndrome, which is when you feel like crap. That's a common problem. There's a serious version of that called FLS syndrome. But that is something that a lot of people suffer from: brain fog, fatigue, sleep issues, cognitive changes, digestive issues, joint pain, allergies, whatever it is, doesn't matter. In just a week of changing your diet, we see a 70% reduction in all symptoms from all diseases. And it sounds like crazy talk, but it's actually true if you just apply that. And it's a wonderful first step for people to hit the reset button. And the way I explain it is that it's like turning your body back to its original factory settings. And then you get to see, okay, well, if you're not better, then you have to keep digging. Do you have Lyme disease? Do you have Mercury? Do you have, mold exposures or something else going on with your microbiome that needs to be addressed more directly? And so, there's a power to using just a very short reset for the body. I was just with someone who's doing the glycan agents. She showed me, a friend of mine, actually, I've seen for years, but he did a 10-day or a week-long fast, and you could see his age drop by 3 years in 10 days. So that's how fast the body can heal and respond when it's given the right conditions. And I always say the disease is basically the body's best attempt to deal with a bad set of circumstances. You change the circumstances, then health can emerge. And health is an emergent property from the right set of conditions. And disease is also an emergent property from the wrong set of conditions. And all functional medicine is as being a detective to figure out what are the wrong conditions that you're exposed to and what are the the right things that you need or the right conditions that you're not getting, and basically provide those. And we were talking about vitamin D in Sweden here. I mean, you've got a country where there's 3 hours of daylight in the winter, and rates of depression, suicide, and so forth are really common. And all they need to do is give people vitamin D, and as a public health measure, it would dramatically change that.
And I was also thinking, because I mean, we have the extremes, and we've heard them today. You know, we have the Brian Johnsons of the world, and then we have, you know, consumers who are really trying to live better, healthier life, maybe going on a detox. But I want to transition a little bit into also, you know, the humanity, humaneness of us, and that, you know, what's your take on our emotions, our thoughts, not only what we digest, but actually how we connect, community, meaning, purpose. How would you sort of correlate that into the equation?
Yes, it's hugely important. I mean, you know, one of the most powerful tools for longevity is your mindset and your beliefs. Optimists live longer, even if they're wrong. If you have meaning and purpose in your life, you'll live 7 years longer, which would basically be like eliminating cancer and heart disease from the planet. If you have a deep set of social relationships, connections, and sense of belonging, you'll live longer, like they have in the blue zones. The science is there about all this, and I think, you know, one of the things that's not talked about enough in medicine is how to deal with our mind. I majored in Buddhism in university, and it's a phenomenology of the mind. How does the mind work? What's the origin of suffering? Why do we have these conditioned minds that have certain beliefs that create biological imprints that then lead to not just emotional suffering but physical suffering? And I was just talking to someone who was showing me the glycan age of, you know, someone who, you know, was very young and then went through a breakup, and she got like 5 years older, and then did therapy, got 5 years younger, another breakup, got 10 years older. So like, you know, like those things register, the imprint. We call it the exposome. Like, what are you exposed to? Whether it's your microbiome or your food or stress or exercise, you know, your thoughts are things. They have a biological impact. Carolyn May says, you know, that your biography becomes your biology. And so we don't often think enough about that, and we don't address that very well in medicine, and even in psychology or psychiatry, we don't really address that. And that's why I'm really excited about the psychedelic medical revolution. And we heard a little bit about it earlier, talking about using LSD for anxiety. But, you know, the trauma we all experience, whether it's, you know, micro traumas of just your parents not understanding you or neglecting you a little bit, or macro traumas of sexual abuse or worse, all those things imprint on us, and unless we deal with our shit, it's hard to be healthy. And we know very well from the research on the adverse childhood events, which there's a questionnaire you can take online called the ACE questionnaire. And if you score high on that, you're more likely to be obese, diabetic, have autoimmune disease, get cancer. I mean, everything. And this is just from the psychological imprints that happen. And we can't avoid those, but there are ways to transmute those. And I think that for me, the psychedelic revolution is really an incredibly exciting phenomena that I think, combined with our understanding of the laws of nature and human biology with functional medicine, can really create a lot of life extension, health extension, and help us live 100 healthy years. I mean, there's nobody in this room that can't live 100 healthy years if you apply what we know now. We probably can't get to 120, most of us, but today for sure most of us could get to 100 healthy years.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is, the next frontier in evolution will be integrating functional medicine. I mean, psychedelics is very much on the rise, but also sound, frequency, vibration. So I think there's sort of two modalities. You have the longevity, tech-driven gadgets, and then you have more like the humane part of it, and you fuse them together. Just on a sort of last note, what would you say is the most important gift that you could give this audience when they leave from here? I know one, just to give a hint, is the point of gratitude. You posted that the other day. It's just a simple modality. If all of you would close your eyes and just think of something that you're grateful for, or look at something that is beautiful, you really tap into the frequency of love, and that's also a healing modality. But what gift would you like to give the audience that they can take with them to really enhance their health holistically?
I think it's the idea that we all can be empowered to take ownership of our well-being and our health. that the disease isn't something that happens to us like we get hit by lightning. It's an emergent phenomena from the beliefs we have, from the choice we make, and that we're all, powerful and can make profound changes in our biology by understanding how our bodies work. Basically, getting the owner's manual to your body, and that's what I've really tried to do with my work. That's what I tried to provide in the content I create, and the book I wrote, Young Forever. And it's worth taking a little time to think about it, to invest in it, to learn what works for you. Like Brian, he's constantly experimenting at a very more nuanced level. But just realize that you have the power to transform your health at any moment.
That's so true. We are all superheroes with superpowers, and we can self-heal, and it really starts with how we exude it inside. And also to have great conversations like this, because we need to share in order to also open our minds even more. Mark, thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you very much.